My partner forbade me from working, and I understood the reason too late. The story you are going to hear tonight honestly left a knot in my stomach because many times control doesn't start with screaming. It doesn't start with violence. It starts with something much more dangerous, something that can even look like. Paula writes to us, and it goes like this. Paula's story, control wrapped in affection. I never thought someone could slowly destroy you while making you believe they are taking care of you. And honestly, I think that was the most terrifying part of all. Because for a very long time, I would have sworn I was living in a perfect relationship. My name is Paula. I am 38 years old, and for nearly 9 years, I was with a man named Mauricio. When I met Mauricio, I thought he was the most protective man in the world, confident, attentive, very detail-oriented. The kind of man who opens the car door for you, who calls to make sure you arrived safely, who insists on taking you everywhere so that you aren't alone. After some rather cold relationships, that seemed beautiful to me. And honestly, I think that's where it all began, because I confused control with love, the independent beginning. We met when I was 29 years old. At that time, I worked as an administrative assistant at a private clinic. I liked my job. I had friends, routines, my own money, and my independence. Honestly, I never imagined that years later I would end up losing all of it. At first, Mauricio seemed to greatly admire that I worked. He told me he liked independent, intelligent, and responsible women. But little by little, he started making comments. Small, almost invisible comments. For example, I don't like your boss texting you so late. I wish you didn't have to stress so much. I could take care of you perfectly. And honestly, at that time they seemed like sweet comments to me, because they came accompanied by flowers, affection, and thoughtful gestures. You don't suspect anything when control comes wrapped in affection. Over time, we started living together, and that's when things changed drastically. The request to quit. Mauricio began to insist that my job was exhausting me. He said I came home tired, that I was wasting my life away, and that he earned enough for both of us. And honestly, I was exhausted. I worked incredibly hard. So when he started suggesting that I leave my job, part of me saw it as something beautiful, as care, as love. I remember perfectly the day I resigned. Mauricio hugged me and said, "Now you'll finally be able to live in peace." And honestly, at first, it was like that. I slept more, I cooked, we watched movies, and we went out. I thought to myself, maybe this was exactly what I needed. Controlling the accounts. But slowly, everything began to change. Very slowly. So slowly that I barely even noticed. First, Mauricio started controlling the money. And yes, I know how that sounds. But at the time, it seemed logical. He was the one working, so he managed the accounts. Then, he started questioning me about everything. What do you need that for? Isn't that too expensive? Can't you wait? Honestly, I started to feel uncomfortable. For the first time in my life, I had to ask for permission to spend money. But again, he always found a way to make me feel like I was overreacting. He would tell me, "I'm organizing our future. I want us to have stability." And I believed him, because I wanted to believe him. The isolation and the trap. Over time, I also started to isolate myself, and honestly, I didn't realize it until much later. Since I was no longer working, I stopped seeing my friends daily. Mauricio also always found issues with them, that they were negative, that they were a bad influence, that they didn't respect our relationship. And little by little, I stopped going out. Then came the criticisms. Small at first. You used to dress up more. You've been very sensitive lately. You spend all day at home and yet you're always tired. Sincerely, that began to destroy my self-esteem. I no longer had anything outside of the relationship. My routine was Mauricio. My economic stability was Mauricio. My social life depended on Mauricio, and I didn't understand the danger of that until it was too late. The job offer incident. There was a specific moment when something inside me started to sound the alarm. A former coworker texted me. They offered to let me return to the clinic. I got incredibly excited. For the first time in years, I felt something resembling hope. But when I told Mauricio, his reaction left me frozen. First, he smiled. Then he asked me, "Aren't you happy with me?" That confused me deeply. I told him yes, but that I also missed working, having something of my own. And then he started. He told me he didn't understand why I wanted to go back to being stressed, that married women didn't need to live like independent single women, and that he worked precisely so I wouldn't have to. And then he said something I will never forget. "Or do you want to go back because you want to meet someone else?" I felt a horrible discomfort. Suddenly, a normal conversation turned into an accusation. I ended up turning down the job, and honestly, I think that's where I completely lost myself. Because from that moment on, my life became smaller, more controlled, and quieter. Mauricio started getting upset if I went out alone, if I took too long grocery shopping, or if I spent too much time on the phone, and he always had an apparently logical explanation. "I worry about you. I want to protect you. The streets are dangerous." Honestly, I think that is the most terrifying part of controlling relationships. They don't look like a prison at first. They look like protection. Until one day, you realize you can no longer breathe. The pop-up notification. Everything exploded a year ago, and honestly, I feel like I woke up that day. One night, Mauricio went out, supposedly for a work dinner. I was using his laptop because mine was broken, and then a notification popped up. A message. I wasn't going to check it, but I saw a phrase that paralyzed me. "Is your wife still locked up at home?" I felt a horrible void in my chest. I opened the conversation, and honestly, I believe my life changed in that exact instant. The conversation was between Mauricio and a friend of his, and that's where I discovered the truth. Mauricio never wanted to take care of me. He wanted to control me. There were messages where he literally said he preferred that I didn't work because that way I depended completely on him. Because that way it was less likely that I would leave him. Because independent women think too highly of themselves. And the worst part, there were messages mocking me, saying that I had become insecure, that I barely had any friends left, and that I was exactly where he wanted me. When I read that, I felt something break inside of me. Because suddenly I understood everything. The money, the isolation, the criticism, the jealousy. It wasn't love, it was control, the confrontation and escape. I waited for him to return, and when he arrived, honestly, I don't think I had ever felt so much rage. I confronted him immediately, and the most terrifying thing was his reaction. He didn't seem surprised, nor guilty, just annoyed, as if I had invaded something private. First, he tried to justify it. He said all men think that way. Then he said he just wanted a stable relationship. And finally, he said something I will never forget. "If I had let you work, you would have abandoned me years ago." Imagine hearing that. In that moment, I understood something horrible. Mauricio never wanted a partner. He wanted a dependent person. And honestly, I think that's where my relationship emotionally ended. But leaving wasn't easy. Because when someone controls your money, your self-esteem, and your social life, walking away becomes far more complicated. I had no savings, I had no financial independence, I had no routine outside of him. And honestly, I think that is exactly what Mauricio was aiming for from the very beginning. It took me months to get out of that house. Months. I had to ask for help, go back to work, rebuild friendships, and sincerely rediscover who I was without him. Because after so many years of being isolated, I didn't even recognize myself anymore. The saddest part is that for a very long time, I defended Mauricio. Even when friends told me something seemed off, I would say, "He just loves me too much." And honestly, I think so many people confuse control with love. Because at first, control can feel nice, until you realize you no longer have your freedom. Rebuilding. Currently, I have been separated for a year. I went back to work. I started going out again. And honestly, I am still rebuilding my self-esteem. Because when someone spends years making you feel small, trusting yourself again takes a very long time. But at least now, I understand something important. Healthy love doesn't lock you up. It doesn't isolate you. It doesn't need to destroy your independence to keep you close. Thank you for reading me. Paula. Wow. Honestly, this story left me thinking a lot, because here we see something extremely important. Emotional control often begins disguised as love. And honestly, I think that's why so many people don't realize what is happening until it's too late. Personally, I was heavily struck by how progressive everything was. First, the comments, then the money, then the isolation, then the guilt. And by the time Paula finally understood the situation, she was completely dependent on Mauricio. That is honestly terrifying. And I want to make something very clear. No, this was not protection. It was control. Because it's one thing to want to care for your partner, but it's a completely different thing to slowly destroy their independence so they can't leave. That completely changes the story. I also want to touch on something very important: financial dependency. A lot of people downplay this issue, but when one person controls all the money, they automatically hold massive emotional power over the relationship. And honestly, I think a lot of people watching this video are going to identify with small parts of this story, especially with phrases like, "He just wants to take care of me." Because many controlling dynamics start exactly like that. Another thing that left me thinking a lot is the isolation. Mauricio gradually managed to make Paula lose her friends, her job, her routine, and her self-esteem. And honestly, I believe that is the most dangerous part. Because when someone loses their world outside of the relationship, leaving becomes much more difficult. Now I want to ask you a tough question. Do you believe Mauricio truly loved Paula? Or do you think he was simply afraid of losing control? Because honestly, there are people who don't want partners. They want possession. And that is very different. I also want to say something important. Leaving a relationship like this is not easy. A lot of people on the outside say, "Why didn't she leave sooner?" But when someone slowly destroys your self-esteem and your independence, walking away can feel impossible. And honestly, I think that deserves a lot more understanding. Now I want to read your thoughts in the comments. What do you think of this story? At what point do you think Mauricio crossed the line? Do you think forbidding someone from working can be considered a form of emotional abuse? And the toughest question, what is scarier? Evident control or control that looks like love at first? I'll read your responses in the comments. And if you have stories you want to share anonymously, feel free to send them in. Because honestly, some relationships don't destroy people all at once. They destroy them slowly.